This is the Rookie Big Board Rookie Profile Series. I am your host, Matt Hicks, the FF Educator, here with John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar, to break down Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to break down his film review, give you some good background on him, dig into his stats, and project forward here fantasy football NFL draft value. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like the video, drop a comment. We have a lot of feelings about Anthony Richardson, and I want to hear it. Legitimately enjoy that discourse. Let us know if you agree, disagree here with our take on it. And if you are not already a Rookie Big Board patron, head on over to Rookie Big Board, our patreon.com/Rookie Big Board, I should say. Get access to full player profiles, full rookie rankings, the Rookie Big Board Discord, just $3 a month. Can't beat that value. John, start us off here with this background here on this divisive rookie prospect.
In my 10 years doing it, he ranks among the top 3 polarizing players that I've looked at. Now, I feel really good at this point after watching a lot of film of this young man. I feel like I have a good value of who he is. We go back to high school. He was a 4-star recruit and the number 9 dual threat prospect. In 2019, Matt, he was an Elite 11 finalist and featured on the Netflix series Quarterback One, Beyond the Light. So you can go and watch this young man when he was in high school if you want, everyone. He finished his 4-year high school career with 4,633 passing yards and 37 touchdowns. He also added 1,633 rushing yards and 41 touchdowns. So Matt, in high school, he had more rushing touchdowns than he did passing touchdowns. His senior season ended due to injury, and he ends up going to the University of Florida. And remember, Kyle Trask was the quarterback there in the COVID year with Kyle Pitts. So he doesn't really get a ton of opportunity until 2021. He was the All-SEC freshman team as a redshirt, and he appeared in 8 games that year. Not overly impressive. However, last year, finally got a chance to become the star of this team, quarterback this team. I'll never forget the game against Utah on that Saturday night. What a great game between the Gators and the Utes. He ended up being the SEC Offensive Player of the Week with 168 passing yards, 106 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. Matt, to me, that was his ceiling. If you love Anthony Richardson, you probably watched that game against Utah and you see the incredible ceiling of this young man as a quarterback. He finished the entire year with 2,549 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. He was second on the team in rushing touchdowns with 9 and third in rushing yards with 654. Now, if you watch a lot of Florida football, and I was watching Anthony Richardson a lot, he was very up and down. And I think he was injured. There wasn't a lot of reporting in college. You don't have to talk about reporting, but he had taken it looked like he was injured, and then he seemed to have gotten healthy and rebounded at the end of the year. Against Tennessee, he totaled 515 yards of total offense, which is third all-time in school history. So if you want to see 2 games of his ceiling, pop in the Tennessee and the Utah tapes. He finished his campus tenure with over 1,000 yards rushing, and he averaged 6.9 yards per carry. He does have idyllic size. He has all the traits and athletic ability that NFL teams are looking for, and he does project as that modern dual threat signal caller. Matt, what do you see on film when you watch Anthony Richardson?
All right, John, this is going to be a little bit of a roller coaster here, but buckle up because the process is really important when it comes to evaluating a quarterback like Anthony Richardson here. So let's start with the strengths. He has a rocket arm. Okay. There is no spot on the field he can't hit. Richardson's going to get it 50 yards downfield. He's going to get it 55 yards downfield. Heck, if you need it, he's going to get it 60 yards downfield. I mean, he has an unparalleled arm. When it comes to just arm strength here, there's going to be few prospects over the last decade that are going to be in a similar category as Anthony Richardson. Now, when you watch his tape here, there are some examples of him firing the ball into a wicked tight window, and he hits his guys. All right. And there's also examples on tape of Anthony Richardson putting some phenomenal touch on the ball, leading his guy with a great level of anticipation, right? These two almost contradictory abilities here. Anthony Richardson can do both at times, okay? Not consistently. We'll get into that. But at times, he has the ability to do that. So that's his arm, John. You're going to pair that up here with somebody who is a pure athlete, and he hits all the boxes. Sometimes we get confused with college stats, college productivity here at the running position, and what makes, a college runner and how that translates to being an NFL runner. Well, guess what? Anthony Richardson hits everything you want to see in terms of that translation. He is fast. We're talking about in a foot race here, Anthony Richardson can outrun some defensive backs. He's certainly going to be outrunning NFL linebackers. He's physical. John, he is going to be willing to take on NFL linebackers. I know because I saw him take on SEC linebackers without any hesitation week in and week out. And here's the big one, John. He's elusive. He can juke a guy out of his shoes. Do not put Anthony Richardson in space. If you are a defense, you will pay, all right, if he is in space, because he is going to break defenders, all right? He's very elusive, and he's slippery too, John. There's contact balance built into that physicality and elusiveness as well. Here's the thing, John. Here's my favorite thing. It's the least talked about thing with Anthony Richardson. He is comfortable in the pocket. He really is comfortable sitting in pressure. So I mentioned that he's willing to run. He doesn't look to run first if it's not a designed run. I feel like that is a conversation that nobody is having. But if you watch his tape, he feels pressure well. He's comfortable moving the pocket, and he's comfortable sitting in the pocket under a blitz if he's looking to pass. Here's another big thing, John, and this is something that I look for all the time when evaluating prospects, but especially raw prospects, right? If you look at this 2021 tape, Anthony Richardson's mechanics were bad, all right, super inconsistent. You flip ahead to his 2022 tape, John, you'll see more consistent footwork. You'll see a more consistent release. There's improvement, John. There is improvement in his mechanics, and that is huge for somebody who, when we talk about his stats, they're not going to be super high numbers. So when you see improvement, John, what does that show? Coachability. He's gone through a coaching change now. He's coachable. That's what an NFL team wants to see, and more importantly, that is what fantasy football players want to see. There's so many external factors that affect whether a quarterback will be successful for fantasy football because they need to develop at any level of what they're coming in with. So when you see a player who's able to take to coaching and develop and improve, that shows a positive trajectory here and a positive mental space that they're in. Now, here's the downside. Here's the weaknesses when it comes to Anthony Richardson. The mechanics still need work, right? We need to tighten up that motion. We need to have a more consistent throwing motion, a more consistent release, and we need to just be a little bit tighter than when it comes to the mechanics. And John, the lack of experience is evident in his decision making. Okay, I mentioned earlier, he can fit balls into tight windows. All right, sometimes he's throwing into double, triple coverage. When I say sometimes, I mean too often. Okay, and that's leading to interceptions. All right, that's leading to mistakes. That's not going to fly at the next level. When I mentioned earlier, he has good touch at times. Other times, he's tossing that jump ball up here, and that's leading to an interception because he had no wide receiver with him that could help him on those jump balls. So we need to hone in the decision making. We need to hone in the mechanics. But John, when it comes to fantasy football, you have to understand the right risks to take. And Anthony Richardson as a profile here is the right risk to take for fantasy football. But let's dig a little bit more into those stats.
I loved watching his tape, but it is a roller coaster. And I was thinking of two players often when I watched him. And it might kind of seem strange, but he reminds me in many ways of a Tim Tebow and a Cam Newton all rolled into one. I see the ceiling, and he has the size of a Cam Newton and the physicality. I think people forget how good and how physical of a quarterback Cam Newton was coming out of Auburn, and when he won the Heisman Trophy, he just dominated opponents. If Anthony Richardson stayed another season on campus, he might have had that Cam Newton type of season. However, Matt, sometimes when you watch him, he's as inaccurate as Tim Tebow, and the decision making is not always pretty. That's why I say that when I watch him. You can go wild on different drives. He can look unbelievable. And the very next drive, you're like, oh, young man, why did you throw that? What decision were you making? So you got to understand what you're drafting. I see the ceiling. But, Matt, I'm going to be the one who talks about the floor here and the concerns, because my model says there are some red flags, and you talked about decision making, and those red flags pop up in the numbers. Matt, look at that touchdown to interception ratio. I like 3-1. He has a 24-15. I'm just going to be kind. That's pretty bad. We have players in this draft who are 85-12, 80-12, like uber incredible touchdown to interception ratio. He doesn't throw the ball into the end zone successfully very often. We're talking about completion percentage, Matt. I'm looking in the modern game. I'm looking at 65% as a benchmark. He completed 54.7. Granted, Florida's offense wasn't great. So I understand context. This isn't Lincoln Riley's offense. You're not going to complete, like Alabama with Tua and Mac Jones or Joe Burrow. I understand that you're not going to get 70% or high 68, 69. But 54.7 harkens back to my childhood in the 70s and 80s. That's not a very good number. And I see times where he misses players. We're like, young man, you got to complete that pass. I mentioned this before. Games played. I warned people about Trey Lance 2 years ago. He didn't play enough games. He didn't get on the field as a rookie. This year, it looked like he was going to play, but again, he got injured. So now if you drafted Trey Lance in Dynasty, he hasn't played very much over, he hasn't really helped you from a Dynasty standpoint yet. So you're still waiting. Anthony Richardson has only played in 19 games. Matt, I think there's some challenges on the learning curve. I agree with what you said. He improved so much, and you can see it. But now you're going from the SEC to the NFL. He needs some more time. I think he'll benefit from a year of learning on the sideline. I think that's evident in the 19 games played. Passing efficiency, that's very low, 133.6. My benchmark is 155. Where does he become a rock star? His rushing upside. We love that for fantasy. So it's clearly there. Over 1,100 yards rushing in his career, and he had a 25% rushing equity of the Gators offense this year. We've seen Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Michael Vick going way back. These quarterbacks with those types of legs, even Daniel Jones with 700 yards rushing this year for the Giants. So the ceiling is there, but I do think the young man needs time. But I do like him, but I think we have to look at the floor, that there's a possibility he needs more time than a franchise is going to give him. Matt, what your fantasy fans know about him?
All right, John, I have his NFL draft projection as day one mid. That's in that 11 to 20 range. It's very possible that Anthony Richardson is QB4 off the board in the NFL draft, but I do expect him to be a first-round selection. And, John, I would not be shocked if he ends up being QB3. You could reorder those guys however you want. I do think his rookie ADP in Superflex leagues is going to fall in that 105 to 108 range. I'm finding doing mock drafts that folks are willing to invest in the risk of Anthony Richardson right in that range here. I do project him, John, to be a weekly starter. You might have heard it in my film review, but again, it's the right type of risk to take here. And I'm going to have high exposure because I think that this is the lowest that you will pay for Anthony Richardson. It may take a little bit of time, John. Maybe it'll be more of a Josh Allen type fantasy value ascent. But I think we're going to get there, which means that Anthony Richardson's going to have the chance to play right in that QB1 to QB2 range here, top, 10 to 12 to 14 overall week in and week out for fantasy football. So some really high upside here. John, if you want to compare him, to a fantasy player right now, he's going to match up right in the same range as Russell Wilson for me, right? Wilson is a guy who's had really high highs in the NFL, but he comes with a little bit of risk at this point. We don't know what we're getting, and I see a lot of comparison here. So where you're drafting Russell Wilson in startup drafts, I think Anthony Richardson can be right there in a similar range. John, what is not in a similar range is anybody when you compare them to the value of the Rookie Big Board Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/rookie big board to get access to our full rookie rankings here, the full profiles, full film evaluations on Anthony Richardson and over 75 other prospects with full film evaluations. Get in the Discord, chop it up, talk to me, talk to John, ask for insight and advice. And as always, we appreciate you checking out this episode of the Rookie Big Board.